the Crater Lake Monsters from 1977. However, it feels right at home as a 50s B-movie. You might almost think that they're paying tribute or maybe parroting the genre, but no, I'm pretty sure it's the real deal. They made Crater Lake Monster to be a good movie. But what we're left with is, well, not bad, but it's certainly not good either. It opens up with Dan and Susan showing Doc Calkins an important discovery that they just unearthed. Deep within an old mine, they just broke through to a new area. And inside, they found cave paintings. That would be pretty exciting, but really nothing new, until they see one that depicts a dinosaur. Furthermore, there's men hunting it, meaning that, at least in this area, dinosaurs coexisted with humans, something previously thought impossible. This is just the tip of the iceberg for this discovery, but unfortunately, they don't have a chance to dive any deeper, because outside, a meteor falls into the lake, causing the old mine to cave in. The next day, at the local diner, we meet two airheads, which serve as this movie's comic relief, Mitch and Arnie. Honestly, I give them a hard time, but they can be funny. Anyway, after a while, the town's sheriff walks in, Steve. He tells the doc how he plans to dive down into the lake to try to find the meteor, and the doc wants to tag along. So they all meet up at the boat, Dan, Susan, Steve, and the doc. There's a lot of cinematic shots that are only here to pad out the runtime, so I'll spare you from that. Once the team dives down into the water, it's not long until they find what they're looking for. However, it's still too hot to bring up to the surface for another couple months. Gee whiz, how hot is it? Hotter than the sun? Ugh! What's the purpose of this shot, really? Is the sun supposed to be scary? Or is it just once again padding to fill out the runtime? I get it. It's the sun. Move on. Now, many months later, this poor schmuck's doing God knows what, and he's attacked by the Crater Lake Monster. I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty cool we get to see the monster this early on, and the fact that it's stop motion is awesome. I'm not gonna complain about the monster. It could have looked way worse. Anyway, it goes on a killing spree, eating people and cattle. It's not long before the calls start coming into the sheriff's station. At first, Steve's more interested in killing flies, with the world's most raggedy-looking fly swatter, might I add. My goodness. Anyway, after a while, the sheriff can't ignore the calls anymore, and he gets off his butt to do a little investigating. Meanwhile, we see what Mitch and Arnie do for a living. They rent out boats, charging $20 for a rowboat, which nowadays sounds like a pretty good deal, but if you account for inflation, that's just over $100 for this rickety old thing. Well, what other choice does this old guy have? He wants to fish. However, what he doesn't know is that no one has had a bite in this lake for months. Probably because the monster's eaten all the fish. And soon it moves on to eating old fishermen. Later that evening, the guys find the boat filled with blood, and they know they're in trouble. They report the incident to the police, but for now they just assume it was an accidental drowning. Like the guy got up, fell, hit his head, bled into the boat, and then drowned. Yeah, sure. Now we see a couple head to Vegas, and their car breaks down. The mechanic says it'll take him a couple hours to get it fixed, so they decide to rent a boat and check out the lake. Despite the missing fishermen, the two budding entrepreneurs give them a boat, and they're on their way. Back on land, Mitch and Arnie argue about what they just did. Mitch doesn't think that they should have rented the boat to the people, but Arnie is only looking at the money they're making. Things accumulate, they start fighting, and things get out of hand. But eventually, the two friends stumble upon the decapitated head of the fisherman. Steve's out here and he sees all this, and he tells the boys to stop business until he can get to the bottom of this. But what about the couple they just rented to? They're out on the lake enjoying the night, looking at the stars?
Look at all the stars.
Wait, what? It's clearly the middle of the day. What's this about stars? Okay, for the sake of argument, I'll pretend it's nighttime. They make out a bit until the monster attacks, and they book it out of there, careening on shore, and the dude passes out. When he comes to, the monster's on land and coming right for him. Thinking quickly, he lights the boat on fire, which scares the monster back into the lake. Meanwhile, that same night, apparently, Doc had a look at the fisherman's head and is perplexed. It was chewed off with teeth, but the pattern doesn't match up with any known animal. We also learned that it's been 6 months since the meteor landed in this lake. It sounds like the doc's starting to put 2 and 2 together.
What's going on in that lake? I wish I knew.
Well, maybe not. With nothing better to do, Mitch and Arnie, which I'm finding it really hard to not call them Bert and Ernie. I just wanted to point that out. Anyway, Mitch and Arnie are wondering what they should do with their free time, now that they can't rent out boats. And what else do you do? Get drunk and wander around. Now, I know what you're thinking. No, these are the only likable guys in the whole movie. Don't kill them off just yet. Well, don't worry. They get spooked by a tree stump and run home. Now over to Steve the sheriff for a bit, who's in the middle of a shootout. Yeah, this guy's been going around town robbing liquor stores and just shooting people at the drop of a hat. And it's high time he stopped. In the most tense police chase ever put to film. Seriously, did they even try? Well, the bad guy goes down a dead-end road, jumps out the car just as it flies off a cliff, and Steve's able to catch up with him. He caps him in the knee, and the guy hobbles off into the lake. By the time Steve gets to him, all that's left is a pool of blood. Later that night, Steve and Doc get to talking, and they see the connection between all the deaths and the water. Great detective work. So Steve goes to take a closer look around the lake. He finally gets a good look at the Crater Lake monster. There's no denying it now. He manages to get away, and him and Doc go to talk to Dan and Susan about it. He describes that he saw a 50 to 60 foot long lizard, but with fins that came on land like a seal. Actually, that's not a bad description. The two talk about it for a while and figure out that it's a plesiosaurus, a living dinosaur. What they think happened is that a fertile egg lied dormant in the cold mud of the lake for millions of years. Then, when the meteor hit, it warmed it up, causing the egg to hatch, and thus, the Crater Lake monster was born. But what do they do now? Steve wants to kill it, and everyone else knows how important this discovery is. They want to capture it. But not being able to reach an agreement, they hold a town meeting, where opinion again seems pretty mixed. Arnie wants to capture it, only thinking of the dollar signs it could bring him, while others just want the dino dead. In the middle of their meeting, the local mechanic rushes into the room. He was just attacked by the monster and barely escaped with his life. Everyone rushes over to the site, and it looks like they don't have much of an option anymore. They're gonna have to kill this thing. So Steve and Arnie load up in a bulldozer and prepare for a fight. But when they get close, Arnie chickens out and he's quickly killed. Arnie! Steve takes this opportunity to attack the monster with the dozer's blade, which does seem to do the trick, and the Crater Lake monster dies right there. Well, that was pretty easy. In the end, Mitch is left blinking at the screen at the loss of his best friend, and then roll the credits. And that was Crater Lake Monster. It certainly is a unique movie. Not in terms of writing or anything like that, but how it's just good enough to keep you watching, but still not a good movie. It's weird. I don't really know how they managed to do that. The standout thing here is obviously, and you can say it with me, the stop motion effects. They're not perfect, but it's still better than a rubber suit like Octoman. There are times it's also a big plastic shell with probably an RC boat under it, but for the most part you see the stop motion, and it looks pretty cool. The music is also good too, but everything else is just okay to subpar. Usually these types of movies you get at least one bigger named actor to lead the show, but here there's no one. The beginning also has a lot of filler shots of boats and the sun, pretty boring stuff. The thing is, on paper, this sounds like it should be a pretty decent monster movie, but just watch it and you'll be wondering why this wasn't on Mystery Science Theater 3000. And, well, it was riffed by the guys over at Riff Tracks, so I guess that makes up for it. And I'd probably recommend that one for a good laugh. But all in all, Crater Lake Monster is certainly a watchable movie, and if it was on late night cable access, I'd probably watch it. But really, one viewing is enough. I give it 2 raggedy old fly swatters out of 4.
Arnie, you're one mighty fine sign painter. Did you know something? You sure can't spell worth a damn. I mean, look at that. Everybody knows bait spelled B-A-T-E.